Okay, Aimee Cohen, welcome. Thank you so much. You are now an official part of our Unstoppable Heroes interview series. And I really can't think of somebody that I would be more inclined to attribute heroic potential to. So you've been a hero in my life in ever so many ways. My personal guide and coach, and somebody who's talked me off every ledge I've ever been on, personally, professionally, and every other way. I have immense, enormous respect for you, and I'm so excited that you're going to be here today to talk with us about the Matrix card.
Thank you. I'm super excited.
So for the record, would you be willing to share your official name, professional identity, and sort of how you see yourself as a professional?
So my official name is Aimee Cohen, and I guess my professional identity is a coach, speaker, author, mother, wife, friend.
And you do all those things well. And your official title?
My official title is I'm a certified executive coach and COO and founder of On Point Next Level Leadership.
And what do you do at On Point Next Level Leadership? I mean, what does On Point, not what do you, Aimee Cohen, do, but what does On Point Next Level Leadership do?
All kinds of things, super exciting. Essentially, we take individuals, teams, and organizations to the next level around and primarily focusing around leadership development, team development, organizational development, and really helping people, equipping them sort of with the tools around sort of growth and development and things like that.
And if people wanted to learn more about you and On Point Leadership, where would they go?
onpointnextlevel.com.
Okay. All right. So there we plugged your, it's important
Yes.
because the context in which we all live is the larger context in which we all work. So we like to be able to, be able to recognize the vast number of people who come to us from all sorts of different areas and give people a chance to learn more about you, even beyond what we'll talk about in the interview. All right. So getting to you as a person, in one word, how would a good friend describe you?
So I thought about this. Can we use hyphens?
Yes, you may. I use hyphens, yes.
Okay. So the first one that comes to mind is just throughout my entire life, personally, professionally, for all of these years and decades, I think the common theme and thread would be the voice of reason.
Mm. I've been on the other end of the voice of reason.
Yes.
So
if we hyphenate that, it could be one word. Yes.
Voice of reason. Yes. I like that. And 2 hyphens. That's, I think, the most hyphens we've had in a description. I think my description of you would be truth teller. I think anytime, which is the same thing, really, just, anytime I really want to know the truth. One of the attributes I love the very most about you is that I will come to you with my, flurry of whatever it is that I have to talk about. And you will ask the same question every time. Do you want to hear my opinion? Do you want to know what I think? And I have the right at that point to say yes or no, to see, perhaps I don't want to hear the voice of reason. I want to be completely irrational, in which case you allow support, create space for, and when you ask the question, do you want to hear my opinion? Like no one I've ever worked with in my whole entire life, I feel like you really mean that. And if I say, no, I just want to have a come apart and have a glass of wine, and tomorrow I'll want to hear the voice of reason, you can absolutely do that. And then when we do activate your voice of reason, I have had some of the very best wisdom and advice from you in my life, life-changing in many ways. Oftentimes a completely different perspective and lens into how I see things, and offered with this is what it is, and no obligation to take it. Just take what works for you and what doesn't. And really, it's a beautiful skill. And I only knew you after you'd been coaching for 25 years. So it's hard for me to know whether this is just an Aimee Cohen soul gift or whether this is trained. But what it feels like to be on the other end of that is it is a natural genius that you have. that ability to tell people to be the voice of reason, to be the truth teller, and to do it in a way that really honors where the other person is and doesn't inflict it upon them. So
Thank
I
you.
love all those things about you.
Thank you.
All right. So thinking about who you are in the world and how you want to make a difference and all those other things, if you could pick a song to be your theme song, what would it be?
So this was a tough one, actually. And so I would say right now, because our theme songs change. The soundtrack of our lives changes over time. So where I am right now, it would be Demi Lovato's Sorry Not Sorry.
Ah. Did I tell you we were going to make you sing it? Oh, just kidding.
I could. I literally could. But, like where I am in my life right now, like unapologetically, you get to a certain point, and the more sort of solid you get, the more sort of clarity you get about who you are, then, in my opinion, you should just show up unapologetically and embrace it. So that would be my theme song for today.
Okay, I love that, and I love all those reasons for, although, well, yeah, Demi Lovato doesn't have quite as much life experience. She's fairly young, but I
know.
I mean, it is true. As you get older, just the things that matter and don't matter they just really change in your filter and your view on the world. And I appreciate that idea of, there's some things that are with us through our whole life, and then there are some things that are about the chapter that we're in our life. And I think you've earned that unapologetically solid and clear stance through a lot of really amazing work and experience in your life. All right. As a certified executive coach and the founder and COO of On Point Next Level Leadership, when you think about the work you do every day, what part of it just lights you up the most?
So it's been the same, throughout my entire life, my entire career, whatever it has looked like. And it's cliche now, but it wasn't when it first started, is really this idea of making a difference and impact. And I describe what I do like crack. It is addictive, meaning there is nothing that will bring you back time and time again, faster, stronger, harder, or for longer than that ability to help someone through a challenge, a roadblock, an obstacle. You work with somebody from that perspective where they think they can, and you get to the point where they know they can, and they no longer need you.
Yeah.
It is the best. And so, in every single capacity, whether I'm doing it as a one-on-one coach, whether I am training large groups, whether I am keynoting, whether people have read something in my book, the goal is the same, which is to make a difference. Some nugget, some moment, some piece of advice, some words of wisdom, some experience that resonates with that individual, where then they can easily apply it, because everything I do and talk about, it is practical, it is pragmatic, it is actionable, it is easy to implement, and it's that idea that sometimes it's the smallest changes or that lead to the biggest results. And when you empower people with that knowledge and that understanding, there is nothing better. And the metaphor that I always go back to and everything is Dorothy and the Wizard of Oz. Meaning everyone already has everything that they need within. They just haven't tapped into it yet. So essentially, I am Glinda, the Good Witch, that is helping.
You're brunette Glinda.
I'm the brunette version of Glinda, the Good Witch, and helping people tap into literally what they already have within, and using it in a way, leveraging it in a way, accessing it in a way that they may not have before.
I love that. And it's funny because I don't think I've ever actually asked you this question. yeah, we've known each other for many years, and I've been on the other end of that experience. And given that you started with describing it as crack, I can understand why we've been friends for so long, because I am an endless source of needing to be reminded that I already have everything I need within me and I can figure these out. And that, you know, the sentiment and the idea of taking people from where they think they can to where they know they can, that's just so, it so epitomizes in many ways what you do and what it feels like to be in a conversation, in a relationship, and working through something with you. And it's a very empowering experience. Also, you know, cliche and a buzzword, but it's true. So it counts. The other thing I'll say about you is that you and I differ in many, many ways. We share some interesting similarities, but I think more differences than not. And one of which is that you love the stage. So where I think, okay, this is like my worst nightmare. I mean, if you asked me what my one thing I would do over, if I had my whole life to live over, I would have figured out how to be in front of a camera and be comfortable being taped and, you know, all that public speaking stuff that they tell you is important. I would have embraced that long ago. And now it's kind of like trying to learn country western dance when you're in your 50s. It would have been a lot easier if I tried this when I was 15. But it's, you know, so inspiring to me to see you in your space on stage, like in this place of absolute comfort where you're able to affect so many people all at the same time. So that difference, I would really rather sit in the audience and applaud you than be on the stage. And then the other big one, importantly, is the shoes we wear. So speaking of Aimee wears, I'm sure you cannot tell this from this interview, but Aimee wears these like impractically high shoes that I literally, if I were wearing those shoes, I would just have to stand still and ask nobody to talk to me because it would take all of my energy just to stand in those shoes that you walk across the stage very gracefully everywhere we go. It's just an amazing superpower to me. And I know you don't see it that way, but I totally do. So thinking about, you've already mentioned a couple of the lenses that you have, you know, a wife, a mother, a, you know, business owner, an entrepreneur, a coach, all those different things. And we all look at the world through all these different lenses. So for example, I look at the world through a mom and a spiritual seeker who like loves woo-woo answers to questions and really looks for divine guidance in all sorts of places. And also just a seeker of human goodness. I aspire to see good in everyone. I'm better at it most days than some days than not, but really I do believe that we're all born good and that within us is just this innate ability to contribute to the world. So as you think about the lenses that you consider when you're looking at the world, what are the different views you have when you contemplate everything that happens in your day-to-day life?
So here's where we are just sort of this, you know, amazingly powerful yin and yang. So my go-to filter always, every single time, every scenario is I'm a devout realist. Devout realist, borderline skeptic, and but super practical and pragmatic. But with an unquenchable sense of hope and optimism, and it does sort of go back to that empowerment piece. You know, I'm a big believer in personal responsibility and ownership, and you know, people being powerful versus powerless. Yeah. You know, I don't believe in victimization. I believe that there is something that everyone can do, you know, despite circumstances or situations. But it is through the lens of reality and practicality. But even within that lens, there's huge potential to, you know, for growth and for making a difference.
Well, you talked about the yin yang between the two of us, and you know, our like you're the only person in the world that I have an R name. So you're Aimee Cohen and I'm Deb Kromick. So our initials together are AC/DC, and
we're taking it on the road. We're taking the band on the road. That's right.
Singing. You will all be happier for it. but that it is very interesting. I think if I thought about us as a sort of a Venn diagram, our overlap is that unquenchable sense of hope and our belief that that there's something that people can do despite their circumstances. I mean, that's the place that we really, then I am a, relentless optimist in search of rainbows and unicorns and magic and, all sorts of things that have magic carpet rides and all sorts of things. And you, on the other hand, are a devoted realist. And it just makes for a beautiful combination. And
it does. Yes.
That between the two of us, I think we span the spectrum.
Yes.
When you were little, who was your hero and what inspired you about them?
So my hero / heroes were my grandparents.
Mm.
And, so this section, I'm not exactly sure if this is exactly sort of what you were getting at. I just think of heroes differently. I think of ordinary individual human beings that have an invisible cape and magic bracelets and, lasso and, all of those wonderful things. And, I know a lot of people when they're young, I mean, this whole idea of heroes, I mean, you have to walk on the moon, or you have to lead the civil rights movement, or, you have to pass major legislation and things like that. And I just have a much different definition of what a hero is. And for me, my grandparents were heroes, hands down.
And I know a few of the stories about your grandparents. I would agree with that. And I think your contention that heroes are individual human beings with, sort of invisible capes, I think is actually very much what the Matrix Guard is all about.
Yeah.
There are heroes within all of us. So I agree with that. And, there are magical heroes as well. So everybody has their own definition of it, but I love the ordinary people as heroes.
Mm-hmm.
So when you think about your grandparents, what were the things that really felt to you or feel to you now as that what they did was really heroic to you?
So it's super simple. I mean, it's, the heroes that are in your life, those are the people that show up for you. They don't have to. They sacrifice, but they show up continuously, over and over and over, in every way, in unexpected ways, in big ways, in small ways. They just show up. I mean, it's simple, but it's not easy.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And it's without conditions, and it's without definition, and it's without parameters, and it's without pretty much anything in return.
Mm-hmm.
So it's they just show up in a big way and in every way.
And you embody that too. You live that way. I mean, I remember, everything that we've ever done, you show up. You show up for all the kids' events. You show up for anytime I need you, anytime I have a whatever, you're always there. You always show up. And I think it is true that I think you're definitely my model for that. And it's interesting to me that that's how you would define heroic potential, but not surprising because it is very much how you operate in the world. And anybody who is on the list of people for whom you show up is very, very fortunate. So I feel very grateful that I'm on that list.
You're on the list. You're on the short list.
I have it now recorded. So, all right.
Yep, so now you have proof.
Yes, I do have proof, and everybody else can hear it too. Now that you're an adult, did anything shift about that? I mean, what you just described, I think, is an extremely insightful view of heroic potential. Is anything different for you as an adult than it was from you as a child, or have you always sort of seen the same things in heroes?
No, I mean, what it did was it further informed or framed how I wanted to be as an adult, mm-hmm. how I wanted to be, most importantly, as a parent, as a mother, hands down. And so that, I mean, that was, you know, it was literally like whatever it took, that's what I was going to do.
All
Yes.
right. All right. Every hero, thinking about you and your heroic quest in this world. So every hero faces challenges and then bests those moments. Can you share a time when you had sort of a heroic challenge and you were able to overcome it and how it made you stronger?
Well, you know, I mean, I'll just, you know, as a mom, I think every day is a is an opportunity for a heroic moment. But I mean, there's a few things, and um, how it aligns sort of with my definition of heroism is this idea of sacrifice and the fact that you show up. And so, you know, growing up, I was a latchkey kid. I was in daycare. Um, you know, there were a whole bunch of things that sort of also, you know, certain generation that we experienced.
Mm-hmm.
And I just made a promise that, you know, when I was a mother, that was not going to happen. And so, for as ambitious and as driven and as motivated as I was on the professional side, you know, there was no way that I was not going to get up with my kids, that I was not going to pick my kids up from school, that it was not, that they were not going to sort of be the focus. And it was not the focus in terms of look what I'm giving up. It was the focus because that was the commitment that I made.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, and so much also too about this idea of heroism and how you show up. You know, I mean, the one word that I always use that is sort of my true north and guiding force is this idea of integrity.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Is, you know, you do what you say you're going to do.
Mm-hmm.
That you are that ride or die, that you are that reliable, that go-to person.
Mm-hmm.
And so there was no way my kids were going to grow up in an environment that didn't feel safe or reliable.
I think that true north of integrity and really how your idea about showing up really informed how you are as a parent. You know, your kids were, I don't know, they were like medium young, right, when we met. So
Yeah.
they weren't little itty bitty, but they were definitely at the age where how you show up as a parent, it's sometimes easier just to say, yeah, okay, just go to your room and, you know, don't bother me. And there was never a moment that I ever saw you interacting with your kids. I mean, you were full on involved in every single thing they did. And it's, and still to this day, very involved, even as they're, you know, growing to be young adults. Well, they are young adults. And it does seem very congruent with how you are in the world to do what you say you're going to do. So,
Yeah, I mean, that's what it's about. And it's not just words, it's equally in actions. And it is that full awareness that you are modeling behavior each and every day. And whether it's my kids, my clients, um, you know, the people that I'm interacting with, you know, I take that very seriously.
yeah.
And, you know, because also big part of the way we communicate, you know, 93% of our communication is nonverbal. And so your actions speak, you know, they don't even speak, they scream volumes about you. And so, you know, just being aware of what that means, what it looks like, the messages that you're sending, yeah, it all matters.
And you do have you have an interesting juxtaposition between how you are like wholly consistent in this and your tolerance for other people's humanness. So I do not rise nearly to the level of what you do, and yet you have such understanding and you offer such grace for other people being able to be different than you, and understanding of, you know, this is how you operate in the world, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you can't understand how other people operate or respect or appreciate them. So that for me is also very important. That's a superpower in and of itself, being able to apply things to yourself to understand how they affect you and to be able to behave that way your own self, and then to also respect other people who operate in, different ways and understand them, but not need them to be just like you in order for you to love them.
Right. Oh no, it would be, first of all, it'd be too much.
Right.
And it'd be, it'd be super boring if everybody was the same. Nobody needs that.
The Matrix card is all about mental wellness and this assumption that, pretty much if you have a brain, if you're in this human experience, if you have a body, that you have a deep desire to be mentally well. Just like, we want to be physically well. Nobody wants to be sick. Nobody wants to feel that sense of I'm not okay. Nobody escapes it. All of us feel it at some point in our lives. Sometimes we feel it often. Sometimes we feel it occasionally. Sometimes we feel it really deeply. There's all sorts of different variations of this, but if you're on this planet very long, you do not escape this sense of having challenges. And regardless of what version or variety they come in, everyone struggles, and people that we love struggle around us. How can you talk a little bit about how mental wellness and any experience you've had directly or with others close in your life around that, finding that space of mental wellness in a time when it wasn't easily accessible?
Oh, there's an endless amount of personal experience that I have with this. Growing up, my mom's bipolar before bipolar was even a thing. And so, so that was my experience. And so, understanding kind of the journey that the entire mental health sort of world has been on, because you never even talked about it back then. I mean, it was taboo. It was, there wasn't even any language around it, certainly. And so there's no language around it. There certainly wasn't any understanding, any compassion, any resources, nothing. Mm-hmm. And so, and in our family and in the collective family between myself and my husband, I mean, there's predominant depression, debilitating depression, suicide, horrible anxiety, and and it just, the way that it sort of shows up and manifests and impacts is very interesting. And not to mention the fact that sort of the whole kind of hereditary kind of component to it, the nature nurture component to any sort of mental health issues. Mm-hmm. And but it when you see it, for sure. Mm-hmm. And it does, it impacts you in a variety of ways.
So you were fairly young. I mean, growing up with a parent in a day and age when people didn't talk about it, didn't have language for it, didn't themselves know how to talk about it, certainly didn't know how to educate their kids. I mean, that's a fairly early experience and exposure to that. Are there ways that changed you that you can pinpoint as a result of that?
Oh, for sure. So, having a mother in particular who was bipolar, and so you're talking about extreme highs and lows. Mm-hmm. And so what it did, like as a child, is it rocks your world. Mm-hmm. It causes just an instability on a level that is almost indescribable. Mm-hmm. Meaning you never knew who was going to kind of show up on that day. Mm-hmm. And everybody else talks about sort of the Jekyll and Hyde. Mm-hmm. Okay. And it's very true in extreme cases. And that was my experience. And so you never really knew sort of who was going to show up or how long that person was going to last. Mm-hmm. And it was this intolerable sense of waiting for the other shoe to drop. And as children, I mean, the one thing that kids crave is security and stability.
Mhm.
And when you have a parent who struggles with mental illness, especially in sort of this category,
Mhm.
is it erodes that sense of stability and security at the absolute foundation. And what it also does is it causes a complete role reversal.
Mm.
And so you are now unexpectedly, unpreparedly,
Mhm.
and instantaneously thrust into a parent role.
Mm.
You are now caring for your parent when there's just some things that just sort of kind of defy human nature.
Mhm. Mhm.
That's one of them.
Yeah, that in how you show up in the world, the stability, the consistency, I am what I am all the time, and there's all that predictability, and I always know I can count on you. It seems like you can draw a fairly clear line. We can't usually or often draw such clear lines, but you can draw a very clear line from, what your experience was, is your mom was suffering from this and trying to parent and figuring out how to navigate this in a world that didn't talk about it and didn't give her language or understanding in a culture that didn't yet really have any conversation about this, and then trying to also parent and navigate this whole course, that you're steady, consistent, do what you say you're going to do, show up when you say you're going to show up, makes a lot of sense, and how that kind of got translated into some of the lovely attributes of who you are.
Oh, well, thank you. And yes, and I don't think I don't think you need a PhD in anything to connect those dots. I mean, it's crystal clear, and oftentimes we are formed, and we are by what we are not or what we did not have.
Mm-hmm.
And it was out of a direct response to that. And that's why my grandparents were my heroes. They filled that void every single time without question. Never, not a single time was there anything but, that complete devotion and responsiveness and attentiveness and, to every detail, in our lives. Yeah.
That's such a
So
great.
I was I'm incredibly fortunate.
Yeah. Okay, so let's talk about the Matrix Guard. We'll talk a little bit about, I know you already know what we're doing, but for the sake of anybody who's listening who doesn't already know what we're doing, I'll describe it a little bit, and then really interested in your reactions and your suggestions and kind of how you would summarize what we're doing with the Matrix Guard. So first, I have to acknowledge that you've been a part of this, both concretely a part of what we're doing with the Matrix Guard as an advisor and a friend, and giving me suggestions kind of all along, and also just as somebody who has defined a big part of who I am in the world. It's been such a it's really been we've had a great opportunity to be able to, I've benefited hugely from you. So the Matrix Guard is really, our mission is to create an epic fellowship of unstoppable heroes, engaged in this mission to make mental wellness more accessible to people, and particularly focusing on the youth and the young that's in this generation that we have lost touch with. They communicate differently than we do. They live on different platforms than we did. And we have this system that's set up as you come to us. We'll be here. You need help. You figure out how to get to us. You wait in line to talk to us. You schedule appointments and you do all these things. You come to us. And there's this group that we have disconnected from, predominantly like 18 to 34, after the age where the parents can't tell them what to do anymore. But really in that young adulthood who there's been so much disconnect with. So our passion is really around figuring out how to find them, identify where they are, and then to go to them. Like, we're doing this on their terms. We want to be on their platform, speaking their language, leveraging the relationships with the people they trust, instead of asking them to come to us and develop relationships with us and to develop trust with us. So the onus is on us to go to them instead of them to go to us. So we're meeting people on these online social media platforms where they choose to be. We're starting with Twitch, which is an online gaming platform. 15 million people a day before COVID. Who knows how many people a day during and after in the world. I've started calling it PP, post-pandemic, because BC, before Corona, was already used by, one who came long, long before us. So post-pandemic, we have really no idea what the world will look like. But what I do know for sure is that the world is more and more virtual. And we knew that going into this. And if we ever doubted it, the number of people who are on Zoom and Twitch and all these platforms, because this is how they're maintaining connections in a world where we're being asked to not go out and to not physically see each other and all the social distancing. So what we were doing this long before the pandemic, and certainly not in anticipation of the pandemic, but this idea that Twitch, which is an online streaming platform where people can stream anything from music to how to crochet a mitten to, I don't know if you can crochet mittens, maybe you can. Anyway,
I think so.
My crochet skills are not really going to be my, I think, defining life purpose, but you can learn to do anything. It has primarily been used for gaming and people watching each other play games, but it's really about creating community. People speak in real time, they chat and talk to each other, there's a lot of live interaction, and it's a place that people all over the world can connect. So we're starting there. It's circumscribed, but it's a big enough platform that we think we can really make a meaningful difference. So that's what we're doing. You may or may not have any questions. I suspect you don't, because you've been kind of following the journey, but if you do, now would be your opportunity to ask them.
Okay, I don't really have any questions.
Okay, all right. And so then moving to kind of your perspective, Aimee, about as a professional and a human, what reactions and thoughts do you have to the Matrix Guards mission?
Well, first of all, I think that I think there's an enormous need. And, one of the things that is, incredible about you is that you are fearless in your attempt to solving the biggest of all problems on the largest of scales. And, I just applaud you for that. And I think as a, personally of kids of this age and also professionally, I think there's a tremendous need, and I think being able to kind of crack the code and figuring out how to best reach them is everything. And I understand that there's this tension between, this generation gets a bad rap. That they're all about entitlement and everything should be customized to me and come to me and make it work for me. And I want to be online and, I want to take classes in the middle of the night and whatever it is. And so, but that doesn't make it not true. So it doesn't make it not true in the sense that, and it doesn't make it, and it doesn't make them expendable. And so I think that there's room to compromise. And, they are not the generation of the build it, they will come. They are not. And so meeting them where they are at and figuring out what language they speak and how they interact. And I will say, the best part of what the Matrix Guard is doing is, and again, more power to you to figure out how to do this, is this idea of proactively getting in front of it. So here's the downside of mental illness, or any mental health issues, is that intervention, help, support, resources only show up when it's too late, oftentimes. And now we're either in intervention mode, we are in, you know, several other worse, sad situations that I'm not even going to talk about. But that's often when you even have the conversation or you start the conversation. So this ability to get ahead of it if you can.
This idea that, you know, people are experiencing so much pain, and sometimes they don't even know that their pain is not normal, or that there's something that they could do about it, or that there's somebody that they could ask or talk to about it, and they let it sort of continue to go on and to continue to fester, and it creates a really indelible kind of pain that's much harder to intersect with and to be able to connect with and to be able to help people figure out what they're doing. And so exactly as you said, that, you know, our system is also set up, it's very intervention based, and it's oftentimes, by the time people are intervening, or by the time somebody feels like their best solution is to harm themselves or someone else, that's the way. I mean, every single human wants to know that they're seen and that they matter, and that they as a human being are valuable. And when we diminish people's ability to have that sense of themselves and don't figure out ways to make sure we know that's true and give them that sense for themselves, over time they can get to the point where they feel like the only way to make a difference or to make a splash or to be seen or to matter is to do something that can be very harmful to themselves or to other people. The whole bullying, the recruiting people into hate groups, all of this, it really speaks to a level of human pain that we want to be able to diminish. You can't solve it, but you know, you can't make it go away. There's no way that we can, you know, just eliminate this, but we really want to be able to reach people sooner and figure out how we can connect with them.
Right.
And
Yeah.
not wait till they're at that point of pain that is so excruciating.
Exactly. And you know, and I will say too, I mean, one of the biggest changes that has also taken place is around language. And so, you know, this generation is also, everything is around anxiety. I have such anxiety. I've got to make a phone call. I have such anxiety. I have such anxiety. And so there's almost like this expectation, like you're supposed to feel some level of angst or anxiety about the most minute, mundane tasks.
Yeah.
You know, that gives me anxiety. You know, if you've ever watched, and I know you don't, if you ever watched the Kardashians for 5 minutes,
No.
everything in the world gives them anxiety. And so it's, honestly,
Not talking me into watching them.
don't. But everything, this gives me such anxiety. I don't know what outfit to select. It's giving me anxiety. No, I mean, so there's almost like this disconnect between sort of kind of like what are basic kind of life skills that you have to kind of strengthen.
Yeah.
And, you know, and that sense of resilience, and you just persevere and you know that you're going to get through it and stronger. And, you know, and there's a double-edged sword, because so on one hand you have influencers and celebrities and you know, stars of all kind who come out with all of these mental health challenges.
Yeah.
And they're super open about them. And, you know, on one hand, you don't want that to sort of become the aspirational goal.
Yeah. Right.
You know, you don't want that to be the new normal. You know, you don't want to feel fine, but like, oh, but everybody else, it gives them anxiety. I got to find something to feel anxiety about, or something to feel bad about, or, you know, something that I have to, you know, share on social media with the world about. And like almost to the point where they're making stuff up.
Mm-hmm.
Not that that's what's happening, but it's that trying to decipher between sort of the mental illness that is life altering, life changing, that is debilitating, that is real, that is preventable, that is, you know, that can react positively to help and resources and support and, you know, all of those sorts of things. The goal should not be that. The goal should be, a peaceful existence.
Mm-hmm.
The goal should be, you know, that inner strength of knowing that, yes, life is going to be bumpy. It's going to be rough, and I will get through it.
And I love that and there's almost this, it's almost like when you first learn a language, right? Our society is learning to talk about these things, but there's this overuse of, or this way in which we talk about normal things, like which outfit do I pick is giving me such anxiety versus like, it's kind of used in the same sentence as somebody who has actual anxiety around. And, you know, perhaps that could be, I mean, I don't want to diminish the fact that that could create anxiety among people, but it's become like this new word that we use and we kind of want to use it, or a new language that we're learning where we only know. And good for us that we live in a society where people are ready to begin talking about it. And we want to be able to use the language and we want to be able to use it, you know, correctly. But there's a learning curve here. We went from like your mom's generation, like we do not talk about this. Nobody talks about this. This is not talked about. There's something, you know, this is like close the door and shove it in the closet. So not talking about it, to a world where we're trying to talk about it and we're learning the skills for talking about it and learning the skills ourselves for deciphering what is the difference between I feel anxious because there's this pandemic and it's super scary. And lots of people that I know and love are affected by this in many, many ways. That's a normal level and in a normal response to something versus now I can't sleep at night. I'm having like panic attacks. I can't breathe. I mean, there's just a whole spectrum of this. And I think a lot of what we're working on doing on our channel, on our Twitch channel, is talking about these things and having conversations so we can explore all of this together and people can say, so I feel anxious. And we can talk about what is that anxiety? Is that situationally appropriate anxiety? And what can we do about it? Or is it something that's more sort of organic and visceral and tied to something that's bigger than the circumstances? And then there's different techniques that we can use to manage all of that. And just that conversation about it and becoming more sophisticated in our ability to speak our own truth and put it out into the world and talk to other people about it too is we're on the beginning of a curve that I think is really important.
Absolutely. And, you know, and it is about language and vernacular and, you know, I mean, common phraseology now is like, oh, just take a Xanax.
Yeah.
Like, how did that become an appropriate response to something?
Right.
Whether it's an offhanded comment or, you know, a real solution for somebody.
Yeah.
That it has now become a little sort of flippant and it dilutes the, you know, the true meaning of kind of what's potentially going on and the seriousness of what that can really mean for somebody. And so, you know, but the pendulum always swings. But it's an interesting challenge and certainly, you know, something that I think in just my opinion just needs to be part of the conversation.
So speaking of your opinion, what suggestions do you think that you have for us as we build the Matrix Guard and put this out into the world?
Wow. So that's a huge question.
World peace, just it's right one step.
Right. I was like,
what was your suggestion for solving it?
Yeah, I was gonna say. So then you're gonna ask me about how to cure the pandemic and then the Middle East conflict.
That's the last question. How did you know?
Okay. All right. So I I think that especially the demographic that the Matrix Guard is trying to target and trying to support. I think that one of the greatest things that you can do is, so fortunately or unfortunately, okay, that in terms of how they receive information, how, you know, what they listen to, what resonates with them is a big part of who it comes from. And so as much as it makes me cringe, okay, absolutely cringe to my core. This is where that pragmatic, this realist. I also know what's true.
Yeah.
And this is where influencers come in handy. This is where peer-to-peer support comes in handy. This is, more than ever, that communal sort of experience. And even if it is a peer that is just, as I always say, whether it's peer-to-peer mentoring, so to speak, where somebody else is about 30 seconds ahead on the journey from them, they are all of a sudden the expert.
Right.
They are all of a sudden in that sort of power position, sitting on the throne, and can oftentimes penetrate in a way that we cannot.
I love that. And I think, one of the other things that you talked about is the creating a different way to use the language of mental wellness accurately. The anxiety is a flippant, hey, just take a Xanax, versus somebody who really should consider medications because their anxiety is so severe, it's debilitating.
Right.
Really helping people understand the nuances and perhaps not using in much the same way that we quit flippantly saying that's gay or whatever.
Right.
Because it's just really like having some more nuanced language that allows us to create depth in the conversations that we have. I think that's really good wisdom, and that and the peer-to-peer support, that have the people who we are impacting be a part of the conversation. They know better than we do how to talk to them. And so how to help them, have them come and be our subject matter experts instead of us imposing upon them what we think they need. So those are great suggestions.
Thank you.
All right. In 1 to 3 words, this is your last question.
Oh no.
We're not going to do pandemic solving or world peace. So we're going to skip those tonight. And we're just going to go to what 1 to 3 words would you use to summarize the mission of the Matrix Guard?
Needed. Courageous. And impactful.
I love every single one of those words. Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much for spending the time doing this. I really appreciate it. And I know it's part of how we're building, asking people and getting their wisdom is a big part of how we're building what we do. So thank you so much. I appreciate it. All right. Good night. Take care.
Thank you.